Hello everyone. This is Tobi from the Phuket Meditation Center, and you're listening to the Dharana Meditation Podcast. Let's sit together, calm the busy mind, and explore topics concerning character development, meditative training, and deeper self-knowledge.
So let's begin by sitting upright, the head suspended from above. Let your body become still, calm. Allow your breath to gradually melt down into the belly, breathing comfortably so that it feels good for you. Let everything become slow in its own time. Just maintaining the conditions of an upright body, relaxation in the soft tissues, and comfortable breathing. Give space to whatever experience you're having right now, whatever thought, emotion. Allow that to be there, whether it's pleasant or unpleasant. Relating to yourself in this moment through kindness, through compassion, with acceptance and empathy. Let your meditation session become a time in which you can be completely, utterly honest with yourself. And the only way to afford that level of sincerity and honesty is if you give yourself a space that is kind and compassionate. Let there be a feeling of goodwill towards yourself. May I be truly happy. May I be at ease. May I be free from all my burdens. May I be free from suffering, from stress, from tension. May I find peace. Allow your awareness to spread out into your entire body, feeling your body as you breathe in. While you're breathing out, finding some softness, some release. Let all the unnecessary tension melt away. Softening, melting, finding comfort. Breathing in, feeling the body. Breathing out, softening the body. And notice how it's nice each time you let go a little bit. And it's 0.1% better. Just keeping that very simple rhythm, breathing in, connecting with your body, breathing out, softening, letting go of all the unneeded tension. Your body will naturally show you spots where there are little knots, little constrictions, sense of tightness. As you breathe out, softening, letting go. Popular spots for tension are usually the eyes, the forehead, the jaws, shoulders and neck, the heart, the chest. Solar plexus, the belly, upper or lower back. Hands, wrists, the hips, and depending on how you sit as well, you may have quite a bit of tension in your legs. And I want you to really focus on releasing just a little bit and being happy with that, being content with that. Each time you breathe out, appreciating that liberation from stress. That's a tiny amount better. And that's nice. You're on the right track. Just gently, patiently keep going, step by step, breath by breath. You will find that all the nervous, restless energy in your body gradually calms down, slows down, settles. Just like heavier particles sent to the bottom of a glass of water. Naturally, without doing anything, everything sinks down. Relaxation is nothing that you can make happen with your will, with your intention, with control or force. It happens when you stop doing, trying, pushing, pulling. It happens by connecting, finding space, allowing. Perhaps most importantly, by appreciating, enjoying the little steps that are feeling nice, that are good, little moments of release. And of course, with each one of us, there's many things that go wrong. You might be very distracted, you might be very tense, you might have a hard time, all that kind of stuff. That's normal for each one of us. But as many things as there are that may be unpleasant, there are just as many things that are pleasant. Just got to find them, appreciate them, enjoy them. Really depends what you are subscribing to. I'd like you to know where your attention is right in this moment. And it's fairly simple because your attention will either be with a sound, a sensation, or with some thoughts. We cultivate knowing where the attention is. Simply that. Right now, I'm hearing, feeling, a couple of thoughts passing through, hearing, thinking, feeling, hearing, like that. Simply knowing what you are aware of right now in this moment. For some people, that may include the sense of sight. Very visual people. Seeing light, seeing darkness, seeing color. Seeing. By knowing what is happening while it is happening, you become more and more present, letting go of the past, the future, connecting to what is really happening, connecting to the truth of this moment, connecting to life. Not an idea of life, but the actual experience of it. Notice the difference between knowing what is happening versus being lost in what is happening. You may be lost in your thoughts, or you may know that thinking happens. Those are two very different states. There is a voice in my head, putting a word behind another word, an image behind another image. Versus, when does this stop? When does the bell go off? I can't stand this anymore. Or, I wish this were going on forever. It's so nice, it's so beautiful. Or whatever else the voice in your head is speaking about. Notice how the narrator, the voice in your head, spins up different moods and emotions. And how it supports ongoing emotions. Narrating them. Perhaps there's a narrative of a miserable me, or the narrative of a peaceful me. Narrative about time, plans, hopes, fears. The emphasis here is on knowing that. We're not changing anything, we're just simply knowing it. Know it for what it is. Just thinking, just stuff happening in your head. See how you go from state to state. Every state arises, changes, passes, giving way to another state, another experience. Flowing from experience to experience naturally, effortlessly. And this is happening whether you're fighting it or trying to avoid it, because it is simple truth of our being. The truth of change, of impermanence, the truth of energy. You have a choice in all this. You can turn it into a drama, or you can simply know it for what it is and relax. Finding peace with truth. And in your own time, you can, while maintaining this state of presence and knowing, come back and open your eyes, Gently stretch a little bit. So, good morning, everyone. It's nice to see all of you. So today there has been a request from Nevin from the last session to talk a little bit about the spiritual friend or the spiritual guide, spiritual teacher, and what that really is. So, let's see. As we've discussed last Tuesday, it's really important to have good company, to have company on your path that is supporting what it is that you want to attain. So that, for example, means that if you want to be a golf pro, then you need to associate with golf pros. Simple as that, yes? If you want to get good at writing, you need to associate with writers. You need to associate with books. You need to surround yourself with people who do what it is that you want to attain, who are already embodying who you want to become. So the Buddha talks about this in the Upada Sutra, which is half of the holy life. That's the wording that is used when you're translating it. It's based on a story where his cousin Ananda comes to him and he says that he's found out that spiritual friends, spiritual camaraderie is half of the holy life. The holy life, you can also translate it as the path. All right, the path from suffering to enlightenment, from suffering to the end of suffering, to freedom, to happiness. And 50% of that, says Ananda, are depending on who we associate with. The other 50% seem to be about what you do, right? That's usually the way of thinking for most people. We think, okay, perhaps company has some importance, but I can do this by myself. I don't need to associate with teachers and with holy people, and I just Google it and I can do this by myself. I just read a couple of books, watch a couple of YouTube clips, and I know what meditation is, right? Seems fairly simple. And then I can also maintain my practice regardless of the circumstances because I'm awesome by nature. I'm amazing. I have a huge ego that tells me that I can do all this by myself. You know, like a little child that can use the toilet by itself, is very proud of it. Lets everyone know I can flush by myself. And then we turn this all into this very strong, heavy emphasis on individualism. This is my room. This is my work. See how good I am. See how successful I am. And of course, that breeds all these kind of feelings of being very strong, being powerful, being in control of our own life and our own destiny and so on. And through this strength, there is a type of arrogance that develops. So the absence of humility. You're kind of like a full cup. You already know. What could others possibly contribute to your oceanic knowledge of truth? Right? Which completely blocks the reception of teaching. It would also block any kind of teacher from actually teaching you. When you're sitting in front of a teacher, say, and you're just spending half an hour of your time telling the teacher of how awesome you are, you haven't learned anything. Even you were having a huge opportunity of actually learning something, you didn't. That half an hour went into self-glorification. And of course, that is something very natural, very understandable, because we are, I think at our core, deeply afraid of uncertainty, afraid of others, afraid of possible problems that may come to us and our inability to deal with them properly. And that fear gives rise then to coping mechanisms. So most of us are coping with life, and we devise various strategies of coping. And then we get very attached to the strategies when they seem to be working. But all they really do is reinforce your ego, reinforce your idea of a self. They don't actually help you. They just make you more hard, more difficult to teach, not more easy to teach. It is usually due to catastrophes, to problems in our life, that we soften up a little bit. And because when we experience those hardships and dramas in our life, then we usually at some point realize, actually, I'm not that cool as I thought I was. I actually might ask for some help. And, life will do that for us. It will soften us. It will slap us weak into humility so we can then accept the light. Otherwise, we're kind of like inflated balloons. If you pour the water of good qualities onto an inflated balloon, will it stay on its surface? Absolutely not, because it's totally inflated. And it may feel right now like I'm talking about those other people, right? Those people with the big egos. But the way you should be listening to this is, that's me he's talking about. Take it personal, please. Let it in. If you truly let it in, you wouldn't feel lighthearted right now, because being humbled never feels nice. It actually can feel downright scary. Before you are able to open your heart and open up to receiving teachings, you first have to become humble. You have to, as they say, empty the cup, right? That's a hard thing to do. Because that means you'd have to acknowledge that very difficult thing to acknowledge. I suffer. I have no freaking idea what to do about it. And I don't know myself. I'm terrified of uncertainty. And I tell myself little fluffy stories to soothe my fear with illusions. That's what I'm doing. And I talk to myself about a great, awesome future that I will be having, completely ignoring the fact that the future looks the following way. You will get old, you'll get severely ill, and you will die, and you will lose everything that you love. Everything that you're investing so much energy right now in, you'll have to give it up. You have to drop it. Your whole persona, you have to drop it. What you're building yourself up to be, you have to give it up at some point. And you have to acknowledge that you cannot fight illness, disease, death, loss. The ego isn't that strong. That will happen. But then comes up again that the mind, and it confabulates all those nice little comfy stories in which you make it through these hardships kind of like a hero. You'll be fine. It'll be okay. I can do this. And we tell ourselves that until life puts us to the test. Does that sound familiar? Especially if you're already practicing on a spiritual path and you notice that life puts you through these trials and tribulations, those tests that are actually there to show you, I am not what I think myself to be. That's a disappointment, and that's very necessary. Without it, there is no spiritual path. As long as you're comfy and happy, and as long as all the things that you've set out around you to keep yourself comfortable are working, then think about it like this. They are working on behalf of your separate sense of self, of your ego. That's why they feel good and comfortable. Everything that makes us feel good and comfortable, what is it that feels good and comfortable? Well, it's me, isn't it? I feel good and comfortable. I'm at ease. Or I feel terrified. There's always an I that has those things, those feelings, those thoughts, and so on. So you might well be on a spiritual path practicing along and thinking that everything's fine and you're doing great and everything's good, and it may be really working against you. because it just reinforces your sense of separateness. Me and others, me and the world. Like I'm really spiritually advanced than the rest of the world. Oh my God, look at those fools. They believe in materialism. But me, I'm pretty much more awesome than them because I'm spiritual. I believe in God. And those other poor souls, they'll likely be going to hell because they don't believe in God. Which gives me a little bit of an advantage, and to be honest, that feels kind of good to me. We can delude ourselves massively. And, you're likely doing it right now. To be fair, I'm likely doing it right now. It's terrifying. I might be fooling myself right now. How do I find out whether I'm doing that or not? Well, the answer is sincerity. Now, how does that have anything to do with spiritual friendship and spiritual camaraderie? It's your spiritual friends that pop your balloon. It's the job of your master, your teacher, your guru, to keep you grounded and to make sure you're actually developing true skill. You think you can do this by yourself? You've already walked in a trap. Well, I don't submit to teachings. All the religions in this world they're just hierarchies of power and dominance. I don't need any of that. I can do without it. I just Google it and I create my own little salad of spiritual stuff that keeps me comfortable. A nice little coping mechanism that I call my spiritual path. But really it's not at all a spiritual path. It's just a nice little coping mechanism. And it works. Like a painkiller, shields you from pain. It works. But as long as you're not addressing the cause of your pain, the painkiller will be the thing that makes you really ill in the future. You may be eating a lot of painkillers, every day waking up with a headache. Every day waking up, okay, painkiller, does the trick, dissolves the headache. I'm fine. Well, turns out later down the line, 20 years or so, there's a diagnosis of liver cancer. Where did that come from? Perhaps that comes from all the painkillers. Your liver just can't handle them anymore. This is how life works, Our problems turn into solutions, and our solutions turn into the next problem. It's an endless cycle of up and down, breathing in, breathing out, life and death. Again, how does that relate to finding a spiritual teacher? Only if you're humble will you seek one. Because it has to be preceded by the realization, I cannot do this by myself. And I suffer. And I really don't know what to do about it. I actually don't know. So how would you learn that you suffer and you don't know what to do about it? Well, sit down still for 30 minutes or an hour and look, what are you going through in that time? My own story, I was quite full of myself when I met my teacher here in Thailand. Well, if I spent 7 years in the monastery, I know my stuff. So I opened a meditation center and so on. So I'm the guy that has the Phuket Meditation Center, right? I know my stuff. So I met my teacher here, started doing Tai Chi with him, practicing Tai Chi. And he's a wonderful practitioner himself. So he spent 7 years with his teacher in Thailand, like wandering through the forests and so on. And while we always prepared for our session, we did some warm-up exercises and we did some standing exercises where you just stand in an uncomfortable posture for quite a while, and it's really, really uncomfortable. And so the teacher would go around and he would say things like, relax, it's just a feeling. You think it's easy to relax? Do you think that's what I thought? Oh, it's just a feeling. No way. I couldn't see it that way. It's pain. It's really uncomfortable. It's attacking me. I want to get out of it. And so the instruction was, well, you can collapse, you can faint, but you're not allowed to get up. But be my guest and just collapse. So that was permitted. You could collapse from pain, but not getting out of it. So you were forced in a way through the restraint of the group, and everyone was practicing the same thing. We all were sweating and shaking, and it was uncomfortable for all of us. And the teacher would assure that we all stay there and then learn to deal with it, to transcend that problem, to understand that the mind thinks it's very weak and it needs to give up right now, but actually there's so much more in you. How would you ever discover that if you were to just stand by yourself, say? Do the same exercise at home, but you stop as soon as you become uncomfortable. You would never learn that you are much more powerful than your mind is suggesting to you. You'd never learn to transcend your thoughts. So here is the first thing that a teacher does to you. He shows you that you can do much more than you think you can. And he would restrain you and break you through discomfort. That's one job that a good teacher would fulfill. A good teacher doesn't keep you comfortable. Because if that would be the case, you wouldn't learn anything. You didn't discover yourself. You'd just be comfortable. What's there to be learned when you're comfortable? Not much, really. I haven't found anything so far. Usually when I'm comfortable, it's just a downward spiral. The more comfortable I am, the less skill I develop. The teacher forces you to be honest with yourself. You look through the various coping mechanisms that you've set up for yourself. Popping your bubble. Popping the balloon. Humbling you. Which is really difficult for a lot of people, especially when we're raised in societies where celebrating ourselves is very up there on the list. Where when you make an Instagram post, you just only get good comfortable comments. Celebrating myself. How awesome I am, how amazing I am. And as soon as I hear the slightest thing that goes against that, what would happen? I'd immediately collapse. Perhaps I'm not that awesome, gorgeous, amazing as I thought I am. Perhaps years and years of confirming to myself that I am that by picking it up from other people with fake images and filters. Perhaps I have to wake up to the fact, well, maybe I've been fooling myself, been fooling other people as well. And all my feedback that I've so far received from the world and others has been based on a lie. And it's very common with people-pleasing as well. I bend myself into shape so that I won't be rejected by others. That I don't have to experience hardship and pain by others. I just do whatever I think is expected of me. I say the right things in the right moment. I never dare to speak my true opinion. It's a catastrophe. Imagine an entire society where people are afraid to speak their mind. That exists nowadays. There's a couple of countries where that exists. People are afraid to speak their mind. They can't go against the grain because they know they will be immediately chastised. My grandmother grew up during Second World War, and there was a time when they were told by the government, the children, the kids who went to school, they were told to report on their parents if they were listening to the forbidden radio stations. And the Allies had set up radio stations. And they all had these little, it's called Volksempfänger, which is like a little radio that all the families had. And you could tune into the frequency of the Allies. And you could listen to the English news, the English-speaking broadcast, the broadcast that was also in German, which was going against the government doctrine. Yes? You were forbidden to listen to that. And my grandmother actually was so afraid. One time she said, she had this story, because her father would listen to those news on quiet. He had the radio up on a wardrobe, high up in the room, and he would stand on a chair, put his ear next to the radio and listen to it really quietly. And actually the duty of his daughter, my grandmother, would have been to report him at school. He's listening to that. So one day she came home and she was terrified by what she's heard in school, by authorities, people that we respect and listen to and look up to as the source of all information. So she said, please, Dad, don't listen to this stuff because I will have to report you for it. And she got whacked around by this, like back in the day, there was physical punishment, yeah? So she would be whacked around by it. And because what kind of regime would be able to implant in a child to go against their own family? Imagine that. Just imagine for a second. Reporting others. Sounds familiar? Does that still exist nowadays? Can you report others to authorities? How far could we take that? Reporting on your neighbors if they sing forbidden songs, read forbidden books. Sounds good? It's all for your best. How has that anything to do with a teacher? Second point, the responsibility of a qualified spiritual guide is to make sure that you are free in your expression. And it makes sure that you evolve according to your own powers, your own qualities and skills. There should be no imposition. You should do this, you must do that. But the teacher has to be very skilled in guiding somebody because it's very difficult to do so. It's not about manipulation at all. So if you are in the role, if you're listening to this, you're in the role of a teacher, you're in the role of influencing others. Your responsibility is huge. Because very often, if you haven't been humbled, if your self is still big, then that self would seek to aggrandize itself by influencing others. I make myself bigger, more followers, more income, etc. If I get bigger, if I have more exposure, if I'm more important. That's what the self usually seeks out. The opposite has to be the case for a teacher. It's not at all about the teacher. It's about you as a student. For me, it's about me as a student when I come to my teacher. It's not about my teacher being on a huge ego trip, having power over others. This is really, really bad. So if you find that out within your teacher, that this is the way it's going, seek distance. It's not good. The teacher's job is to be compassionate and kind. That should be the motivating force. What is kindness? Well, simple. May you be happy, may you be well. That's the interest. I don't know what it is that it takes for you to be truly happy. Let's find out together. Let's look. Look. What is it that it takes for you to find happiness right now? Let's explore that. Rather than, here's what you should be doing so you can be happy. Buy my 12-step program, do this, do that, whatever. But what is it that you need? Let's find out. Sit together and see. What's going on with you? What is burdening you? Where is your point of stress and suffering? Let's work right there. Together. You're not alone in this. Let's find out. Right? So compassion is the wish for acts to be free from suffering, whether that be yourself or others. Kindness is the wish for acts to be happy, to be truly happy and at ease. Got to find out what happiness really is. What is it? What actually is happiness? Let's find that together. That should be what motivates the teacher. Really nothing else. It's compassion and kindness. Sincerity, another big point. Like, how honest are you with yourself? Integrity, another point. Is your public self and your private self, are they one? Do you think and speak in alignment? Or do you think one thing and speak another? How much integrity does your character have as a teacher? If your integrity is very high, you give your students the opportunity to become free from fear, because integrity is a result of being free from fear. You don't have to pretend, in other words. You don't have to be misaligned. You can afford to speak your mind and to mind your speech. You know? Another point that is very, very important is lineage, background of the teacher. Where is your teacher coming from? What's the lineage, the background? Would you go to a doctor for a surgery, complicated surgery, and the doctor tells you, yeah, I've read a couple of books. I Googled that surgery yesterday, and I think I know what I'm doing. I'm really confident in myself, too. That's a catastrophe. Confidence based on what? Really, we can feel confident about ourselves and our knowledge and our background, even though actually you're not. You have to explore your shadow. Are you truly confident in your background? Is it based on an intellectual, kind of experience, or are you realized in what you're doing? Have you realized what you're talking about? In other words, if you talk about the end of suffering, then, are you realized in that? And are you empowered by your lineage to teach? Has your own master, your own teacher, given permission for you to teach? That's really important. It's not just something that I, in brackets, ego, come up with because I want to aggrandize myself or I want to cope with my own suffering. So I become a teacher. Wonderful opportunity to ignore my own problems. I can now tell others what they should be doing. And trust me, the majority of teachers or guides and so on out there, they do not have permission from their lineage holders. They don't even come from proper lineages. It's books they've read, random experiences that they've had in their own meditation where they think, oh wow, now I'm really enlightened. Maybe they saw an amazing light. Maybe they've heard voices. Maybe they've entered profound stillness for 3 hours. And then came out of it and thought, yeah, now I'm done. I interpret it like this, so it must be true. And then they start teaching, start going out, and they're not kept in check by any instance. This is not good. Every teacher should be kept in check by their lineage. I'm terrified to go against my masters. I'm terrified of that. Because what I do and what I say is some form of representation, even though it's absolutely miserable, but it's still a form of representation. I have a duty as somebody that sits here before you to not mislead you and to not lead you into some whatever fancy beliefs or whatever, Because it's the face of my teachers. It's the face of what they stand for too. Give an example, okay? You have a great Buddhist leader, and then suddenly it turns out that he's selling drugs and he's raping people behind closed doors, okay? Now, what does that do to your faith in Buddhism? This is massively wrong. This is a big problem because it's such a good message, but it gets destroyed. It destroys the faith of people. which is their entry door to something beautiful, to something good. But now they say like, oh, what? Are all Buddhist teachers like that? Oh, I don't like Buddhism. Like it happened, unfortunately, in Christianity. Just mention priests and little kids in one sentence. Everybody has an opinion immediately. This is horrifying. This is really bad. This is very, very sad. Because the core message, the core practice, and I'm talking about the Gnostic teachings. I'm not talking about the intellectual stuff. I'm not talking about the dogma. I'm not talking about behavior rules, ethics. I'm talking about the Gnostic teachings. The realization of God is now blocked because people have no trust in leadership. That's very unfortunate. So when they hear Christianity, no trust, no faith. A lot of people leave it. They can't stand there because, I don't want to be part of a system like that. That's terrible. It really is. It's a beautiful, profound teaching that is at the core. Strip away all the cultural stuff. Come to the core message, the core practices. It's beautiful. As profound as Buddhism, as profound as Hinduism. All Gnostic teachings in this world, no matter where they come from, what they are, they point to a very similar path to discover truth. Know thyself. And if a couple of people break that possibility for others who have faith in these things, that's really heavy. It's really, really heavy. So do you think I want to be the guy that breaks your faith in something that is so beautiful? That's the responsibility. Not only am I absolutely whipped into my practice, I have to do it. It's my responsibility to do it. How could I sit here and talk about the practice and the principles and so on and so forth, having a clear conscience when I am doing the opposite? I talk about truth and meditation, and like I couldn't care less about truth or meditation. I'm not doing the work. How can I sit here? There's a lot of discrepancy within me between the high ideals of my path and who I am as a person. There's massive discrepancy, which when I talk about it right now, I feel humbled by it. I'm such a flawed individual. I really have to step on my game. And it's so important to have somebody that keeps you accountable. That would be your teacher. Just remembering my teacher, thinking of my teacher right now, I absolutely hope that what I'm doing is in alignment with this vision. I pray for that, If you don't have that, you think you are so cool, you're so good, you can do it by yourself, watched a couple of videos, did a bit of practice, had a bit of experience. It doesn't work that way. I don't think it does work that way in a way that could be beneficial for people. Actually, truly beneficial for people. It's not just a little fling, a little bit of relaxation that you give to people, but it's a profound path. And building up that path takes a lot. Yeah. And like that, there's a couple of things. Sincerity, integrity, compassion, kindness, wisdom, experience, lineage. To mention a couple of them, that's all important. And keeps us in check, makes sure that what we are doing is for the benefit of all, not just for my own benefit. This entire path is not for my benefit as an ego, as a separate self. It's for the benefit of all by giving up that. Those coping mechanisms and so on and so forth. So it's a very profound topic. And I highly recommend all of you to find yourself a really good teacher. If you don't have a good teacher, good master, there's no path. That's why they say in Tibetan Buddhism, in one of the verses, it says, the teacher is the root of all good qualities. It's the first line of that verse. Teacher is the root of all good qualities. Without a teacher, we're lost. That's all that comes to mind for this morning. Do you have any questions? Anything you'd like to talk about, discuss?
We hope you enjoyed this episode and had a meaningful time. For more information and upcoming events, head over to our website at phuket-meditation.com. Thank you very much for listening and have a wonderful day.